How's it going, everyone? Again, I guess this is the part 2, or part 3 maybe, I'm not sure, of the inner fender repair on the 1963 Rambler Inner. Just like to show you guys the finished product there, what it looks like. And it's just, this is my favorite part, just when everything's finished. And you just look at it and you remember how it used to be before. I have to do some repairs down there as well. So when you get a rust problem at the top, water naturally goes down due to gravity, so whatever's beneath that goes to hell. And this whole thing was just done, and it's like a tank now. Just put a thin strip of silicone, actually sorry, the polyurethane. This is the third sealant that I'm using here. It says there 35% joint movement, maximum adhesion and flexibility, above or below waterline use. So I just put that here because the fender goes on here, and you know, fenders, they do move, and that'll scratch the paint off and start some rust here, so put that in just to prevent any rust. One thing I believe I forgot to mention in the previous video. This part here, I think it's called a cowl. This part here, underneath this here, where the water flows into. These corners, I formed these pieces, this part here, with stainless steel. So even if water does puddle in there, it's not going to do anything to the stainless. And scratching that off there. So yeah, that's what I did. The stainless there. And another important thing, even though I used the stainless steel there, the welds themselves were done with normal MIG wire, which is steel and which will rust. So what I did is I diluted some of that asphalt stuff there with this stuff here, paint thinner, or I believe acetone, Shylene. Most things will work equally well. And I just diluted so that it was very liquidy, and I poured it into there. There's a hole there. Not really supposed to be there, but it came to good use now. So that hole there, just poured it in, just to make sure the water doesn't start rusting anything under here, which is the welds that are under here. So just made sure of that. I think then what I did is I retightened the I tightened up those bushings there and there, and over here it's supposed to be about a ½ inch. Couldn't exactly get from where. I think it's from there to there on this side, like the outer side. But basically, this bottom line is it's got to be really tight. And there, same for there. There, it's actually supposed to be touching. So this again, just really tight, because this here is essentially part of the spring. This here, right? This is part of the spring, so it is taking quite a bit of the weight of the car. It's basically a torsion bar. This is, if it's loose, it's not doing its job, which means it's overloading the spring and compressing it more than it's supposed to, by decreasing the height of the car, body of the car. You can see the spring, it's a little bit tilted still, but it will straighten out with the weight of the car. It will come this way. This thing will come out like that. So anyways, that's not really a big deal, but I guess I could I could have left it a little bit more inclined, but yeah, there's nothing you can do about it, and that's not going to be a big issue. But the other important thing I'd like to show you guys is that the shock absorber does have an impact on the height of the car. And I think on a previous video I said that it sort of didn't. I wasn't very clear, but from this angle here you can see that it does. And how does it do that? Well, you can see at this point the shock is completely extended. It's completely it's at its maximum length. There's the term I was looking for. And if that shock was shorter, as you can see, like right now, the shock is actually holding this here in this position. If I were to take the shock out, this whole wheel assembly, the suspension would lower. It would lower significantly. And in some cases, it would actually lower all the way down to the floor. So the shock absorber is actually controlling the maximum extension of the spring, right? So if I were to get a shock there that's 1 inch, let's say that much, 2 inches, let's say 2 inches longer, and the whole suspension here would be 2 inches lower, the spring would be 2 inches longer, less compressed, it would be smoother, it would have a smoother ride. So the more compressed the spring is, the harder, the stiffer it becomes, right? The more force it has. So you'd have a smoother ride with a longer shock. And especially, you never know what people put in. Hell, maybe somebody just looked at it and said, I just put this shock here we have hanging around, even though it's shorter, even though it's longer, let's just do that. So on the other hand, if I had a shorter shock absorber, it would cause the spring here to compress even more. The wheel would go up into the wheel well further, and the spring would be more compressed, and you'd have a stiffer ride. So we might try. I measured the length, the dimensions of this shock absorber. The hole there, it's 1/2 inch diameter. The eye hole in the shock absorber, which is not really a big deal. There's smaller ones out there, so usually they're smaller. You might just have to put like another bushing inside it, like a steel pin inside it, just to if we don't find the proper shock. But hoping we find it. You never know what people do, guys. As you can see, as you can recall from the previous video, the guy that had it before me didn't bother with welding, taking the time to do a proper job. They just put 3 rivets here and a piece of sheet steel, very flimsy sheet steel, and some foam, and they said, hell, who cares? We'll probably just get it, selling the car to somebody else, and let them deal with the problem. And that to me is called dishonesty. But anyways, so you never trust. I never trust what people done before, until I look at it. And so there you have it. The shock absorber does have an influence on the height of the car, and obviously, if it's the range of the shock absorber also matters. So let's say you have one that's this one's supposed to be 14 inches long. That's what it is, fully extended, 14 inches. Let's say we have one that, alright, it's 14 inches extended, but the minimum, like all the way down, it's only 10 inches. So, which means that it'll block, at some point here, it'll block the spring from going as far as it should be, and just start getting, metal to metal contact inside there and smash the shock absorber while you're driving. And you can certainly notice and hear that for sure. But another thing is, let's say the shock is shorter, then the spring is all the way up here. Once you lower the car, it'll go, like, it'll compress the spring even more. So I might just get a shock absorber that's a little bit longer. That might be a good idea, like let's say 1 inch longer, 2 inches longer. Not completely sure. If it's longer, it won't really matter. Why? Because the shock absorber, it doesn't take any of the weight of the car. Whatever weight you put on it, it'll compress, until it bottoms out, until it reaches its maximum extension, or its minimum length, right? So if I get like a longer shock absorber, it's just going to be sort of compressed, which isn't bad at all. Right, and then the spring will be more more loose. Probably have a smoother ride. The car will also ride higher, and yeah, there you have it. Because right now it's actually stopping the body of the car, from becoming higher. So it affects, simply put, the shock absorber affects the maximum and minimum lengths, or the heights of the car, if you will, or lengths of the spring. Just the maximum and the minimum. There's no in between. It doesn't do anything. Right, so I just thought I'd explain that to you there. So I haven't seen any good videos explaining that. People just say, oh, it doesn't affect the height. Well, bullshit. Obviously it does. Right? Pardon the language. You guys have seen worse videos. Bad language. But, so yeah, people, obviously that's wrong. I sort of understand what some of them are trying to say, but it does affect the height of the car. There you have it. That's why you gotta explain things. When you just say stuff like out of your head and without any proof, then you either make mistakes or you confuse other people. So I guess let's try to see if there's anything else I should mention. Ideally, you'd want a shock that has a large range, so that to ensure that it never reaches its maximum or its minimum values. So when that happens, it's hitting the wall. You don't want it to hit anything; you just want it to ride in between, sort of thing. It's hard to explain, but what really controls, makes the height, is the spring. But if the shock absorber is limiting it, then we have a problem. So we shouldn't have a problem having a longer shock here. That shouldn't be an issue. And shouldn't be a problem, because this here won't hit the ground, because, well, the spring is still holding it. This is still holding it. This will hold it. You see here, it bottoms out here. So even if I take the shock off, it's not like this whole thing just falls off. That's not what happens, because the spring hits that part there. See, you don't want that to happen while you're driving, though, because you'll get like a very rough punch sort of thing. You don't want that to happen. So yeah, I think that's pretty much it. There you have it. By the way, I checked this shock absorber, and it's not completely done, but it's shot. It's not it's not working. And it's not expanding as it's supposed to, so we're gonna try to change that. But for now, I'm just gonna leave it there. And yeah, I guess I talked too much already. I'll try to see if I should mention anything else. Another project that I might have is replacing this front part here. As you can see, it's just sort of flimsy sheet steel. And if you ever want to take the grill off or put some rubber here, sort of have to reach inside there, and it's very hard. And I don't like having it so thin like this. I'd like to have a sturdier front here. At least the cross member, so you don't really have any any like solid cross member across here. So theoretically, it would be possible for these, like the whole front end, to be squashed in, like squash in. And of course, I doubt that's gonna happen. Yeah, the only real cross member we have is this thing here, this part here, which is not the best. So that's why you have some cars, especially big cars, you'll see like a bar going from side to side that ensures the car stays straight, because cars do twist, guys. Just think of a 2,000 kilo, 2-ton piece of steel, thin steel, long stuff, just moving around at 100 or over 100 kilometers an hour, hitting bumps and hitting rocks and things like that, and people driving the hell out of them, and so they do twist. Alright, so I sort of want to get that done someday. For now, it's just going to stay like that. You see here, they just unbelievable, just horrible what they did here. Probably just go with a nice straight piece here. Straight like that. No these stupid curves here. Just straight, and we're going to try to find some. Yeah, so here, this piece I actually cut it out so that I could get to these two nuts here. That's pretty much the only way I could do it. Not really another way unless you disassemble the whole front and take the radiator off. And that's just crazy. So once again, why does this happen? Because these cars are not built by mechanics. They're built by engineers that sit in a computer, and that's it. Alright, you're welcome.